Hello and welcome back to the What the Falk Sunderland Preview Podcast. Things are very, very rosy in the Sunderland garden at the moment, and we'll be looking to make it 4 wins from 5, I believe, when we welcome the boys from Swansea City this Saturday as the Welsh side become the Stadium Elites first foot, I believe. As always, we're here to get the lowdown on exactly what we can expect, and I'm absolutely delighted to say we're rejoined by Luke from the SwansCast, for his second podcast appearance of the season. Luke, how are you, my good sir? Are you well?
Yeah, very good, thank you. And thank you very much for having me back on. Enjoyed the last one, and hopefully, Swans won last time, so hopefully we can have a little bit of a chat and it ends well for me, but I'm not quite so sure this time.
I was going to say, it's getting a bit too regular, isn't it? People are going to start speaking soon, mate. I did say Swansea cast, by the way. It's SwansCast. I just got so used to saying
SwansCast, yeah.
SwansCast. I kept saying
SwansCast. It was just fine. And surely if you type both in, I'm sure it will come up. So
at least something kicking about, I'm sure. But just to clarify, definitely SwansCast.
That's all right.
We'll start off, obviously, with the most recent news surrounding Swansea. Normally we'll go into current form, but let's do something a bit different. Looking at the headlines, January transfer window, obviously we are in it. You're heavily linked with the move for Joe Geltart, which we've been credited for a link with, and Michael Obafemi has been linked with a move away to Burnley. What are your thoughts on the latest transfer rumours regarding Swansea and what's to be believed and what's not to be believed?
It's very difficult to put a finger on where we are at the moment. It's very quiet from the club. So we haven't spent a lot of money in recent time. We know there's not that much there. Summer was a bit hit and miss. Perhaps didn't get what we needed. So going into January, I don't really know what we got available in terms of to strengthen. There's been a couple of recalls in regards to loans leaving us, and we've recalled one ourselves. Morgan Whittaker's come back. Obafemi, you were right to highlight. Bit of drama there. I'm not really sure what's going on. There was obviously interest from Burnley in the summer. Bit of a drama situation where he didn't play for a couple of weeks, came back into the team. World Cup happened. I haven't come back since the World Cup. So I don't know why. Like, there's not really a concrete answer, but Russell Martin has basically said he's not reaching his expectations. That's all we've had, really. I think you put two and two together and think there's a continuation of the summer transfer saga there. So if it's going to happen again, for me, like, you just got to let him go, and this can't happen. Every transfer window is disruptive to the team. Maybe our current form that we might get on to discuss is representative of some of these problems, because we're having pretty much the same thing with Jamie Patterson. We had an issue with him last January with West Brom coming in for him. Didn't play all transfer window, then came back into the team, never the same player, and now all of a sudden he's missing in action again. So these players, I don't know, better without them, I think. In terms of incomings, I know we've been linked with a couple of loans. Like you said, that guy you're interested in as well. But I can't tell you how competitive we will be against you for the signature, because we always get linked with a bunch of kids on loan, and perhaps like 1 or 2 out of like 10 or 20 come off. So there's nothing for me to say is in the pipeline. I'm quite actually underwhelmed with the lack of activity so far. It's a little bit concerning. So
talking about things that are underwhelming, the FA Cup was great this weekend, but as much as we had an exciting end, we both had fairly boring draws. You played Bristol City away. You drew 1-1. Our former player, barely remember that he played for us, to be fair, but Antoine Semenyo equalised late on for Bristol City. I don't think anyone ever wanted to play the team in the same division as them away or at home in the FA Cup early doors. But were there any takeouts from the performance, or was it one of those you kind of half fell asleep and didn't care about it that much?
We kind of controlled the first half. It was a good controlled performance, but we didn't really do anything spectacular, create many opportunities. Or I say opportunities, we had some opportunities, we just didn't want to shoot. So if you look at the stats, it looks like we didn't do much. We got into some good positions, but the players were like waiting for that perfect pass it into the back of the net moment rather than having a pop where it's a reasonable opportunity. And the goal that we actually scored was very much like goals we tend to concede, where they made a mistake, or their centre-back basically passed it to one of our players in the box, and he was like, oh, okay, I'll just pass it to our striker who's got a tap in. So we didn't earn the goal at all. Okay, we didn't deserve to go 1-0 up by creating loads of chances, right? But we did control the game. I would say the first half, definitely. Second half, very underwhelming. A little bit like they started off well. We came back into it. And then they had a little bit of a foothold out of nowhere. I think our midfield started to tire a bit because we've been starting Grimes, Allen, and Fulton, who are our three centre midfield players. There's not really another one does the same job. The problem is when you reach 60 minutes and they're all kind of starting to get a bit leggy, especially Joe Allen with his age. You've got no one to bring on that does that same job. So you've lost the midfield, and it's happened a couple of games now. Bringing on Cham and Kundle, I think, came on. They just don't do the same job. So teams, I think, feel if they can hold out to later on, maybe they can have the impetus in the end of the game. And that definitely is what happened. So Bristol got the goal. We didn't look like necessarily going back ahead. And there's a replay, which I don't think either team really wanted. So a bit dull in the end.
Yeah, as the FA Cup sometimes can be. Ours was a little bit better because we scored two late on, which was nice. But I think ultimately when you get drawn against a side in the same division, it can be a bit of a slog. So I kind of get it. But I was trying to look at Swansea's form, and I've got to be honest, I've done that thing which I find really frustrating from a podcast perspective where I can't really judge you. You've lost 3 of the last 5. You've won only 1, I think. However, in that run, you've lost narrowly to Burnley and Norwich, fair enough, and Reading, not fair enough. Coincidentally, you've smashed Watford 4-0 and you've drew 3-3 with Coventry after being 3-0 down with 20 minutes to go. I'm not going to try and sum that up, so I'm going to ask you to. Could you sum up the form since you've returned from the break a little bit? Because that's a bit mental, isn't it?
It's I don't know what's going on. Obviously the issues with some of the players I think has contributed to certain things. We've changed our system last couple of games, so we've seemed to have ditched the wing backs, gone to a 4. And if I refer back to the Bristol City game, part of me, because I went to the match actually, part of me is wondering if he was using that to try and experiment with some ideas in that match, which were quite apparent. And what we saw with the players and what they were doing on the pitch is something I've not seen before. But that's another conversation. The form, very indifferent. Was not expecting to thump Watford 4-0. But again, I think we went to 4 at the back in that game and it clicked and it just worked and they just could not deal with the attacking threat, which is weird because I think we have struggled. We scored a decent amount of goals, but not loads from our strikers. We have struggled with being clinical. Again, Bristol first half. Then we go put 4 against a team like Watford. Yeah, it really doesn't make sense. And then the previous match losing to Reading, which that's a typical Swansea game from this season. That Reading game, you say maybe we shouldn't have done that, and it probably is correct. 2 early goals conceded, and then we always on the back foot coming back. If you look at the stats, I think we've had the most goals 80-minute plus in the league. We've had the most points from a losing position in the league, and that's exactly why for games like that. That's a game that could have ended 2-2. Look at the Coventry one that you mentioned as well. So 3-3. How do you go 3-0 down and decide you're going to turn up? Just I don't know. It's good the fact I guess they buy into the system and they keep trying till the end. But we just seem to keep letting ourselves down at the start of the game where we put ourselves on this back foot. And I think our league position is representative of that as well. We're just making life hard for ourselves and have done it all season. And that's probably costing us a really competitive playoff battle, I would say.
Talking of obviously making it difficult for ourselves, let's go back to the 2-1 defeat or the 2-1 win for yourselves in October. It does feel like forever ago because we had no strikers and it felt like that was kind of the time when we were like, oh God, we need strikers because I think we've got 7 games in at that point. But I remember you having a really outstanding first half. Obviously, we pulled it back a little bit in the second. Obviously, it's hard to judge and no game's ever the same. But what did you make of the game at the time and which Sunderland players kind of stood out for you most on that particular day?
Yeah, it's difficult. Obviously, that's some time ago. There's a lot of football being played since then. But from what I can remember, I think Jack Clark had a pretty good game. I know he got the goal as well, didn't he? I think before when we spoke, he was one of the ones that highlighted as one to watch. It's difficult to judge your forwards because they're not the typical guys that would normally play there, would they? In that game, as you mentioned.
Yeah, correct.
And as you said, we had a really strong first half, and then you came back into it. But that sums our season up in. When it clicks, we play fantastic football. We're really hard to play against. And then all of a sudden it can just go. Or you get back into the game all of a sudden out of nowhere and we can't seem to find that rhythm again or get the control back or whatever it is. So getting stuck in perhaps maybe in the midfield and roughing us up a bit perhaps is what does it. But yeah, definitely Jack Clark. I think your left-hand side in general, so the left back too, I think they were causing us some problems. I think I might have mentioned in the podcast Joe Latibody on our right wing back at the time and right back if he plays this weekend probably. He's a centre back playing in that position, converted into a right back. He's not a right back. He works hard, but we need a right back. Can't criticize the guy because he's doing a job for the manager, being asked to do it. So I feel harsh criticizing him. But we need to be like successful and proper push up the league. That's something that you can't really do. And I think teams, if you can exploit that square peg in round hole, which it is, he's definitely one to be targeted. And so yeah, your left hand side there worked really well for you.
Obviously, going back to the game as well, I remember coming off the back of it, and we spoke about it sort of off air just before we came on. I remember thinking that Swansea were one of the better sides we come up against. Now, some of the fans listening to this will understand what I mean. No side's massively overpowered us or made us feel inferior to this league, which we probably half expected when we came in. But if there was maybe 45 minutes or 60-minute performances, I could pick out Burnley in the second half. We went 2-0 up. They then beat us 4-2. So they did all right in the second half, shall we say. And your first half was, up there with, we thought, they passed the ball well, they scored 2 goals, we don't look in the game here. So you were one of the better sides we came up against. And I remember specifically thinking, you'd probably, in my opinion, based on the teams I'd seen and kind of the stature as a club and where you'd been recently, be in the playoffs come season end. What surprised me the most was that even though I knew you'd had a bit of rocky form, you went to the game in 15th.
Yeah.
How are Swansea fans feeling about the season at the time of speaking? I know it's a tight league, but how are you feeling about the position and kind of recent form?
It's I feel like it's a missed opportunity, but like it's hard to know where to point the finger because I don't think we have the depth in the squad really to maintain the playing style we want to play, which you've obviously just credited as it does work sometimes and it looks good and they got the control there sometimes. And Vincent Kompany actually said after the Burnley game, the 2-1 defeat, that no team in the league manipulates the ball as well as what we do. Really complimentary of our style, but we lost the game. So there's so many managers that have come out and said, like, Swansea play the best football in the league, hardest team to play against in the league. But how many of these, we're not winning all of these games. We're not, we're down in 15th, as you said. So something's just not quite there. And yeah, I don't know what it is. So a lot of people do criticize the manager. They think he's not quite getting it right, but a lot of it is working. It's just there's one last piece I think that's not quite clicking all the time. We had a really bad start to the season. Say from where we are now, the start to where we are now, the middle part of the season, so just before the World Cup, really good run of form. Got ourselves up to I think maybe like 3rd or 4th at one point, where we were one win off top of the league. Then we stopped winning. And now we're down in 15th, miles away from Burnley, like literally miles away. 3 points it was, literally 3 points. So you think at that point, maybe it started working and we're going to start pushing on, but the wins dried up quite significantly since then. But it's not as if the performances necessarily really changed. It's just silly mistakes. We do really often concede stupid goals. And chasing games all the time, I guess. And our strikers not being as clinical as what we need, really, especially considering Joe Pereira's form last season. That's not really quite clicked into gear for him this season so far. But for me, I'm quite happy to keep giving him time. He's clearly building something. He does need some more players. Whether it's on him that he's made some transfer mistakes, could be the case. But you got to remember, young manager, we are in the Championship for a reason. He's in the Championship for a reason. You got to learn, make the mistakes together. But they're not all happy in 15th. I will be honest with that. Just got to remember the gap is still quite small to the playoffs, and 1 or 2 wins can change it. So there is still time to correct that. It's
a really funny league in the sense that, like, I think we went 4th the other week, and obviously we're all buzzing. We're still kind of buzzing really in 8th. And I think Tony Mowbray came out and says, yeah, but 2 defeats, you can drop to like 12th. And it is that kind of league. And I think if you go on a bad run of form, I mean, look at Borough. They've gone on a bit of a good run of form since Carrick's come in, and all of a sudden they've gone from being like, and the same with West Brom. It's like this league is opening up a gap a little bit more than what it was. Maybe it's not as tight as it was at the start of the season, but it's still tight as a gnat's arse at the end of the day. So there is still things that can change massively. But Russell Martin, I think, is now officially in, I think, technically 18 months and 9 days. I did this because I checked it on Google, to be precise, which is probably a fair amount of time to judge a manager.
Pretty long for the Championship as well.
He's an absolute veteran at this point in the Championship. It's probably enough time to make a solid judgment on style, management, recruitment, the rest of it. Although it's not enough time to probably make a definitive judgment. Obviously, you've given your thoughts on it a little bit, but you touched on that some of the fans are kind of pointing the finger a little bit at him. I think we obviously seen Russell Martin's MK Dons in League One, and it's a style that he's going to stick with. He's brought Harry Darlan to kind of be one of those players that implement it, who's obviously scored against us. Russell Martin's not going to change as far as I can see from what he wants or what he believes is the right way to play football. And he played at Norwich for a long time, who have exactly a similar DNA. But obviously that can get frustrating. Not everyone agrees with that style of football, or people kind of are very results-based, especially the fan base. Naturally, you are, if you're winning, the style of football is always great, isn't it? You've given a really balanced viewpoint, but I assume that not everyone has the same opinion. Is the people who are kind of like not certain on Russell Martin, and what's the percentage of people that are not too sure on him?
It's difficult to say a percentage, because I think a lot of the people that you see on social media, I feel like you see a lot more of the negative people just by default. That's why when you want to moan about something, you go online. But necessarily when you're quite content and you're okay, and you're just like, well, I wish we were doing better, but I'm not concerned. I'm not worried with the manager. You don't necessarily put that view out there. So I would say it's probably maybe like 30%. If I asked for a number on it, there is a good few people who like aren't happy with his style, think it's a bit boring, think we're not scoring enough, think we should be doing better, concede stupid goals. That's probably the biggest one. And I think everyone can get behind that. It's like the stupid goals. Because you can, for the first season, this new style of play, it is risky sometimes. When those mistakes happen, you can say, okay, they're still getting used to it. But when you're 18 months in, okay, how are you going to fix it now? Like, we need to stop this happening, because that is what's costing us. Go back to the Reading game, 2 stupid goals. I think Wigan, we drew 2-2 with Wigan, 2 stupid goals, or 2 corners or something like that. Like, sort the set pieces out and you win that game 2-0. But because we didn't, we drew 2-2 and we had to come from behind to do that. It's just easy points. And how tight the league is, we're 4 points off the playoffs. So say take that Wigan and Reading game, sort those 2 out, and that's just 2 games and you're in the playoffs. And there's far more examples than that this season, and that's the frustrating thing. Especially from the early days, we went through a period of like always conceding 90-minute equalizers or losers or something for like periods of 10 matches, where it was like, can we actually hold on to a 1-goal lead? Because nobody was confident, because it was happening all the time where we just bottle it. So a lot of frustrating things. That's what I mean. It's like the one piece of the jigsaw that just hasn't clicked yet. But I feel like if you're going to go for this sort of style, give a young manager the chance. And you're going to be this patient, where you're 18 months into the project, and I feel like you deserve to continue that a bit longer. It's not like it's going absolutely awful, like it's not going terribly. And again, 4 points can easily overturn that by the summer if you really got it working.
I think probably the big thing for Russell Martin is, and I know it's 4 or 5 games ago, but sometimes you see players sort of lose faith in the way that the team's playing if they have a specific style. They might not necessarily dislike the manager. You can just see the confidence is knocked. And I think you go back to that Coventry game, if you're not believing in the project, you're not going to pull 3 goals back. So that's probably, even though we're going back a little bit, it is obviously a huge positive. In terms of players that I would look at, obviously, I don't get to see anything outside of the highlights, give or take. You look at the stats and you look at the players that are really standing out. I think Joel Perreault obviously is your top scorer, but for me, Matt Grimes, 6 assists this season, seems to be obviously the key creator, if you do have one. And I think the creator in any team that plays possession-based football is obviously hugely important. Am I kind of on the money with those 2 names, or is there other players we should be watching?
I think Matt Grimes is the most underappreciated player in the squad. A lot of the fans are seeing it more now. There was a game earlier this season where he was suspended or something and he didn't play, and everyone was like, oh my God, we actually miss him. Something I've been saying on the podcast for like ever, and a lot of people haven't seen it, but he literally runs our team. So if he's on the pitch, he just does everything. He takes us over. But maybe you don't appreciate it all the time, because it's kind of the stuff you do, and it's not the like glitz and glamour. He just takes us over, gets on with it. Everything goes through him from deep midfield, and he keeps us ticking. That's his job. So one of the criticisms he has is sideways, backwards passing. That old cliche of a tiki-taka side or whatever, that he only does his pass backwards, sideways. But I got a stat that popped up after the Bristol game. So Matt Grimes has completed 282 line-breaking passes in the Championship this season, which is more than any player in Europe's top 5 leagues. So that shows how important he is to us. And I think people just don't appreciate that. He is really good in the middle of, he does make a couple of errors sometimes, but for the Championship, really quality midfielder. And there's a reason why he's captain. There's a reason why he literally starts every game, plays 90 minutes for us week in, week out. So you're right to point him out. As for Joel Perreault, he's been quieter this season, but he is still our top goal scorer. Now, I talked about the experiment in Bristol, and this might be partly why it hasn't quite clicked for him this season, because he has been utilised not always as just a central forward striker this season, especially when Obafemi was in the team as well. Obafemi would generally play in the middle and Perreault would be behind on the right. So for Bristol, we played two up top with Liam Cullen as the other striker. But when we were going forward, the strikers are peeling out to the wings, like the corner flags, if you like. They're peeling out wide, which is weird because we didn't really have anyone running through the middle then. I don't really know what was going on, but this is why we didn't have that many shots against Bristol. I think what Martin was trying to do was get the play out wide through the strikers, and as we get an opportunity, maybe cross into the box, the other one peel into the back post sort of area. But it didn't quite click. But Perreault, he scored 2 against Watford. We thought maybe that would get a season underway. He did get a goal against Bristol, but like I said, bit of a tap in because they gave us the ball. You can never rule him out. If you give him a yard of space, he could put it in the back of the net from outside the box, looking like with ease. But we are still waiting for him to kind of turn up this season.
Looking at the game on Saturday, obviously, I think I said to you off air, we've got to run the games at home, which is always you've got to be more confident with. And the big thing with Sunderland is our home form wasn't that great, but I think we've won 2 of the last 3. We beat Millwall 3-0, Blackburn 2-1 on Sky, and obviously lost to West Brom, but I think everyone's losing at West Brom. So obviously we're naturally quite confident going into the game on Saturday, and we're playing good football. But how do Swansea fans view it? Because I feel like the last game that we played each other, due to our run of form, we didn't have any strikers. You were in form. You were definitely, in my opinion, the favourites, and I don't think no one likes losing, but we kind of understood that Swansea were a good team and an established Championship side now that, can turn us over, and we had no strikers. Whereas I think this game, I think it would be a bit of an annoyance if we got beat based on your form and our form, but it is the Championship. But
yeah,
are Swansea fans seeing this as a really difficult game, or is it an opportunity for points based on the fact that our run's got to come to an end at some point?
I think Swansea fans quite often feel quite in the way what I see online. We like to think we just should beat everyone. Maybe it comes from the Premier League era, like we were there for a while, and you guys obviously were there for a while as well, but take that away, like we're just looking at who we are playing. They'll see it as you guys came up last season and we're going away. We haven't been in the best form. We need to put it right. So go and put it right at Sunderland. That's what they'll see it at like. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful because I know it's a tough game.
Not at all.
Sometimes you think, we had like 7-8 years in the Premier League, whatever it was. You do pick up some fans, I think, along that sort of journey that are only used to that sort of success. And then a lot of that gets aired online where you see like, well, now we're in the Championship, but we should be in the Premier League because that's where we were for 7 years when I started supporting. So why are we not beating Sunderland? They were in League One. That's kind of, which is wrong. It's a tough game. I think Sunderland, you were in League One, but you could argue the same thing that you should have been higher. So look at the teams that come up last season and look at how well you're doing in comparison right now, where you are in the league table. And that's the story that you need to look at, really. You're higher than us. So we should be going there looking to get something from the game by working hard, not because on paper we are a better team. You're higher in the league table because you're having a better season currently. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a tough game for us, I think. Going away from home is always a bit harder. First goal is key. I think I say that every single podcast I go on this season for us, because the way that we play, even more so than anyone else, because if we score first, we can kind of control. You have to come at us, and then maybe it gives us more opportunities because of the way we like to keep the ball. If you guys score first, even though we have had a really good success chasing games this season, again, it's just making life difficult for ourselves and like hard work. You got to change up at half time. It's just, it's always easier when you score first. I know that's a cliche thing to say, but with our style of football, we can just control it so much better from the lead, and we seem to not then make as many mistakes if we can get that first goal. So, but it'll definitely be tough going up there, and obviously got a big ground and might be a little bit atmospheric, which is obviously nice for the home fans and the home players.
I hope so.
Long journey though.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. But Swansea, I haven't been myself, but I have had on good authority that Swansea is actually the best away day in the Championship. So if you don't get promoted this season, you have got that trophy, and I've been told that
Yeah,
by multiple different people. So
I'm glad you all
um,
enjoy coming down here. It's a good thing
it's
to hear.
it is an absolute belter. It just is quite a distance from Scotland for myself, but I'm sure I'll get there one
Yeah,
day.
I got Lee who does the podcast with me. He's going to the game actually. He's got a friend that's moved from Swansea to Sunderland, so has kind of become an adopted Sunderland fan. I think it was for the missus. So they decided to go move there rather than her come here. Maybe you could, I don't know, one of them pulled the short straw. But anyway, so they go up there sometimes quite regular actually, because usually they try and pick one of the games up there as an excuse to go up and have a weekend and see them, catch up, because obviously they don't see them now. So they usually go to Sunderland since you've been up. And yeah, so I'm sure you're all about it from him. I don't know how they're getting it. I think they drive in, so it's quite a long. Sometimes they fly though, so it's not too bad when you fly.
I was going to say, can you remember? Now, I've got the benefit of Google here, and I very rarely do this, but it felt like it's been a while since Sunderland played Swansea at the Stadium of Light. So I thought I'll have a look just in case anything interesting there. There is, but not in terms of result, probably more the people on the pitch. But can you remember the score first and foremost?
Where was it? Would it have been like 2016?
2017, 13th of May.
Close.
We were already
Close.
relegated at that point.
Oh, no, I do know. I think that's what the year we went down. We went down together, didn't we? Was it the same year? We're lying.
It must have been. It must have been.
I got a feeling because we had to beat like Stoke and maybe even you guys, Stoke and Southampton it was, and we completely bottled it that season. That's why we went down. We had it in our own hands. But I'm going to say Andre Ayew and Jordan Ayew maybe play for us.
Yes, correct. Jordan Ayew was definitely playing. Andrew was not. I think he had transferred to West Ham by that point.
We got him back in the last season. Maybe I'm getting the seasons mixed up. 2017, you're saying, yeah?
You finished 15th. I've just checked.
Okay. So it's the season before. Sorry, I should have known that off the top of my head. Anyway, okay. So with the previous season, that's fine. So that would be Paul Clement, maybe?
I think so, actually.
No, not Paul. Do you know what? There were so many managed changes when it always merges into one. It was either Clement or no, I think it was Clement. He saved us that season. Okay, so let's say was Llorente up top?
Llorente scored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Fabianski would have been in goals. You would have had Kyle Norton on right back.
Also scored, Kyle Norton.
Oh, I remember that actually. I feel like it was like he turned and just hit the screamer.
Yeah, correct.
Centre backs might have been Fernandez.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I think he liked to play 5 at the back at that time. So Van der Horn.
You had 4 at the back that day.
4 at the back. Was it Van der Horn?
It was Alfie Mawson.
Oh, Alfie Mawson, of course. I was going to say his name was the third, but okay. Left back would be Olsen.
Yes.
Midfield Carroll.
Yes.
Fur.
No.
Might have been on the bench.
He was.
Britain.
Yes.
Sigurdsson.
Yes.
We said AU, so there's one more winger.
Routledge. You said Llorente as well, so it's a midfielder.
Oh, midfielder. No Routledge then.
Nope.
Midfielder, sure.
The most interesting one in terms of the context of this conversation, probably.
Has he played for both teams? But
he certainly has.
Oh, why can I not remember this? Of course, I would forget the. I don't know. My mind's gone blank there. I'm thinking of a bunch of midfielders in my head, and you're going to tell me, and I'm going to be like, oh, of course.
He's young.
He went on loan, didn't he?
And scarily, Sunderland's team that day had England's current number 1, Jordan Pickford in goal, John O'Shea, Jason Denayer, Jermaine Defoe, Barini, Larson.
When you say the names, it's quite a good lineup. Barini, you played for both as well.
Yeah, so he did. Yes. And I was looking back and I'm thinking, bloody hell, there's some players there. But that was the season we went down horribly and they were all absolutely awful because David Moyes was the manager. I've got quite close to my predictions recently. I actually got my second one right, I think, the other week with Blackpool, and I was 1 goal out last week. So I'm going to go with a very safe and try and keep my record going here. a safe 1-1.
I was going to say a draw as well, but I was going to go 2-2 because I would not be surprised if we have to come back from behind again and just snatch a point, because it just seems to be what we like to do.
It's happened at the stadium like a few times this season as well. We've had 2-0 against Burnley, 4-2, 2-0 against QPR 3 minutes ago, 2-2. So it's viable and it's possible. But I'm going to go safe and say 1-1. But Luke, before I let you go, obviously this was something I kept forgetting to do last year, and I am going to remember to do it this year. I think a lot of Sunderland fans find it really interesting when you get the opposition viewpoint after the game as well as before the game. Where can we find obviously your stuff, which is fantastic. If you don't mind me saying so myself.
Thank you very much. But yeah, you can just type in SwansCast on YouTube. That's where we put all of our stuff goes on there. Our podcast on Spotify. So again, type SwansCast in, you get the podcast. But YouTube, we do like this sort of thing where it's a match preview. Well, obviously you're coming on after this now, so we'll do the similar sort of thing from your perspective. So they're on YouTube, but on Twitter is where we're most engaging in terms of talking to the other fans and stuff like that. So probably they're the main places. Yeah. So if you want to hear the thoughts after the game, it'll probably be like the podcast from the week after the match.
Perfect. Luke, thanks very much as always. Great to chat to you. And we'll be chatting further on your podcast just now. Yeah. But for the listeners, we'll wish you a pleasant goodbye. And no luck on Saturday, as always, as expected, as we always do.
Well, yeah, it's long, sad travels, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Well, I'll go with that one. That would have been so much better than just saying no luck. Thanks, mate.
That's all right. No worries. Cheers.